I wrote a fair bit of the outline for this video while I was at the airport, so let's see how this goes.
You're the man.
Yes, I am.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, your resident Michael Shannon hype woman, and today's video is about SnyderCon 2023.
It's been a long time, baby.
If you are new here, I went to SnyderCon 2019 and had a lovely time, so when it was announced that there would be another one, I knew I had to try to go again. I'm a different person now, but my interest in Zack Snyder's artistry hasn't really changed. I do find, though, that there are certain facets of the story that plays out across these three films that I appreciate in a different way now because of the way that those elements have grown with me as a person. I'm not just referring to the fact that Zack Snyder's Justice League had not been released when the previous SnyderCon took place. I'm more so referring to my understanding and perspective of certain ideological and thematic facets of the storytelling. In the immediate lead up to my trip, I was very stressed out about other things that had nothing to do with SnyderCon. I had some things to get done before my trip, and I think the stress of getting through them and making sure I packed what I needed shook me up a bit. I was desperately trying to not forget anything, and sure enough, I ended up forgetting things. For example, I had to go to Whole Foods while I was out of town and buy some floss. If you're not flossing every day, what are you doing? Go buy some floss.
You believe your son is safe? I will find him.
Friday was the Man of Steel screening, and there was also an opening reception beforehand, a mixer of sorts. There were some food trucks and stands and a drinks set up. Everyone's ID was checked during check-in every day to make sure that the name on the ID matched your ticket order, but on Friday it was also done to check whether or not you were old enough to use your drink ticket to get an alcoholic beverage, and if you were, you got this silver wristband. Everyone received a food ticket, a dessert ticket, and 2 drinks tickets. And when I went out there to grab something to eat, Zack and Debbie ended up coming out. I saw a lot of people swarming Zack, but Debbie was just standing and chilling near where the drinks were being served. So I swerved past the Zack situation and went to go talk to Debbie. I explained to her who I was in regards to my having attended the previous SnyderCon, and she was very kind and gracious. I talked to her a bit about how much I admire the work she's doing on these films and how she's doing all of this in such a largely male-dominated field that is film producing.
With your gift and your talent and your vision, are you kidding?
Later on, I did quickly queue up to meet Zack, though. By that point, the security watching over him had made it clear to the remaining people who were trying to meet him that you needed to just go up, take your picture with him, and keep it moving, because it was approaching the time that the screening was supposed to start. I was fine with that. When it was my turn and I got to meet him, similar to when I met Debbie again, I identified myself from the prior SnyderCon, and it clicked for him too. Watching Man of Steel on the big screen was so much fun because I could see Michael Shannon's giant face yelling, snarling, and foaming at the mouth. Honestly, I kept giggling whenever he would get really into it. Not too loud, I was just giggling to myself. And I wasn't giggling because it was necessarily funny. I was giggling because I was just having so much fun watching Michael Shannon play General Zod. The level of energy and commitment he has in his performance is so engaging to watch, and it's something I really admire for his craft as an actor. When the panel started, I think it was a good hour or so before I actually got called on, and Zack could see how agitated I was getting. You can see in my video of the panel that he kept looking at me, and he would sort of smile as if to express this sympathy of, "Ooh, she's mad. Ooh, she got blatantly rejected again." Now, if you're watching this and you think I'm complaining, I'm not actually. I'm merely recalling how I experienced it play out in the moment. See, when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't know if you're going to end the night being one of the people who got chosen. I didn't know what my success rate would be with trying to participate in these Q&As. You can try to plan, prepare, and you can hope for the best, but you simply do not know how things will go until you go through them. Eventually, I did get called on, and that's why if you watch my upload from that panel where it's just my question and the mod says something about how I think we have someone up at the front, and you can hear me say, "Sure do," not me being snarky.
I think we have someone up in the front here.
Sure do.
I am invisible.
But just so we're clear, please, nobody track down the panel moderator and give him any grief, because after the panel was finished, he flagged me down, and both he and his, I don't actually know if it was his colleague or someone he has a personal relationship with, but there were two of them and they were very complimentary to me about my question. The moderator said that he had been thinking that we should try to get more insight into Krypton as it appeared in Man of Steel, and he was really glad that I asked a question about it. So it's all good here. It's all peace and love. Nobody be unnecessarily hostile online, please.
No ritual animal slaughters of any kind.
But yes, if you haven't watched any videos or clips from the panel, I asked about the world building they did for this iteration of Krypton. I find their take on developing its history, mythos, and culture to be really fascinating. I didn't give every detail and facet that was weighing on my mind when I came up with the question, simply because it's a Q&A. It's not a long-form dialogue being had between two people to publish on YouTube. But it is important for me to give examples of what I'm referring to that inspired me to ask my question in the first place, because asking the most bare bones version of my questions would not effectively convey what layers are speaking to me and inspiring me to seek out this insight from Zack about the world building in the first place.
Do you study here?
I'm considering it.
I was also really appreciative of Alex McDowell's contributions to the discussion about my question. It meant that more ground was covered than if it had only been Zack answering the question. After the panel was finished, I flagged down both Christina Wren and Alex to quickly grab photos with them as well. Alex also seemed kind of, I don't know if it was surprised or if he was impressed when I asked if we could first slightly turn the direction of how we were standing so that we would be better lit for our picture based on where the lights were in the room. I think he thought I was in film school because of that, as well as because of my question. I'm not. Not officially anyway, just some side classes.
Smutsa, smutsa, paslidny. 3 nights with a Bolshoi ballerina, that line was all she taught me.
Well, you know, to be fertile.
Saturday was the screening for Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. This was a film that was played at the previous SnyderCon, and I must say, I love how no matter which fans of these films are in the audience, whenever you hit the point in the runtime where Bruce is about to get roasted and then Diana shows up in order to save him, it gets a massive roar of applause every time. For this panel, we had Patrick, DJ, and Damon joining Zack. Now, Damon I was more familiar with. He was at the previous SnyderCon. It was actually supposed to be Larry Fong who was going to come to this panel, but unfortunately he got sick, so he didn't end up coming, and DJ was kind enough to come instead. He had already been set to do the Sunday panel, so I'm assuming he's somebody that's local. Most people who come to be guests on these panels tend to be local. It's just more convenient. I know we need to talk about the DJ in the room, but I do want to first put a shine on Patrick because he was so lovely. He had this wonderful vibe, and I loved hearing his perspective on his work doing production design for the film, and I hope we get to see more of him in other spaces, virtually or otherwise, where he can go in depth about the work he did. Anyway, DJ, where to begin? This man is a stunt queen, and that's why he was my favorite person by the end of the night. If you saw the panel, you saw how much he was acting up. You saw how he was not about the facade. He was ready to go in and tell it exactly like it is, and that brought a level of unhinged chaos that gives me the same nostalgic glow as when I watch compilations of Tiffany Pollard. Zack's out here being on his best behavior because Zack is not the type of person to get messy at his charity event. But DJ was ready to pop off and tell Zack, well, why don't you tell them the real story, the one that had the studio executives shook? I don't think that's exactly how DJ worded it, but that was the essence of what he was saying. And of course, there was the mic drop incident where he stormed off and did the double flipping of the bird, and the fact that Damon followed suit after him. I think we can all agree at this point that every friendship group needs a DJ. Truly iconic. Someone who will keep it real, someone who will have your back, and someone who has a bit of a flair for the dramatics. That's what I love. 10 out of 10.
Oh! No! 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 No!
I asked my ultra-political question during this Q&A. It was about the political intrigue of BVS, and I must say, I did not expect the reaction that I got to that question. Someone re-uploaded my question elsewhere, which I don't always love when people do that with my videos, but it really just depends on what the video is and the larger context. Either way, that's why I always watermark everything, because you just never know whether or not people are going to source you or not. So I've seen some clips of my videos floating around, and some are sourced and some are not, which is kind of to be expected. But people have mostly been really cool about the question that I asked. Zack responded well, but also when the panel wrapped up and I went to the signing afterward, both DJ and Deborah, completely of their own volition, unprompted, were really complimentary to me about my question, and I was not expecting that. In general, I'm not used to compliments like that because I'm someone who is making videos to post online, so when I get nice comments, I appreciate them, but it's also ultimately ones and zeros on an electronic device. It's very different to have human beings in the flesh standing in front of you complimenting you on your analysis of fiction, and even more so when those are people who worked on the thing that you're analyzing.
What the fuck is going on in here on this day?
I didn't actually get anything signed at the signing because I just have too much stuff already and I did not really want to accumulate more material possessions. I'm trying to figure out what I can declutter from what I already have, and it's challenging to say the least. And even without all of that, I didn't go to SnyderCon with the mentality of wanting to acquire more stuff. I really wanted to have an experience. I wanted to make that human connection with the people who made these works of art what they are, and to me that's what makes going an invaluable experience. I did find it funny though that when I was called on for my question at this particular panel, Zack said, "She's 2 for 2."
This lady up front was the first one to put her hand up, I swear, so I'm gonna go with her. But I'm definitely gonna get the people all the way in the back too.
Ben, you were a brilliant Pierre d'Alençon, and you're the best Batman.
Come in. Take your pants off. Cunt.
Okay, Sunday, Zack Snyder's Justice League screening. There's a lot that I could say, but I've got a lot going on in general, but especially this week. I got another follow-up junket interview booked for a show I already covered, and that's happening this week, and Queen Charlotte is coming out this week, and I will have to cover that, so I will try to expedite what I have to say about the experience of Day 3 of SnyderCon 2023. For starters, I knew early that Ray Fisher was coming. I didn't say anything about it online because I was asked not to, but I knew. Eventually, though, he was spotted by a fan who posted a photo, and then that was that, and everybody knew. But Zack and Deborah had made it also known on Saturday that Chris Terrio was supposed to be coming for Sunday. So I initially thought that I would ask a joint question for Ray Fisher and Chris Terrio to answer together. But then I found out that Ben was going to be coming. And I was informed of this earlier than the larger masses present for this screening found out about it. So again, I was told to not say anything, so I didn't. If people are entrusting secret reveals and asking me not to say anything, I'm not going to put that out there. It's not like I'm finding something out that's ethically dubious, where the only morally upstanding way to proceed is to blow the whistle on the whole situation. It's just fun stuff that should be kept quiet until it's going to be revealed the way it's meant to be revealed.
Don't look at me, I don't know a thing.
So upon finding this out, considering that I already know Ray Fisher, he has done interviews with me before, I know that it's a lot more plausible for us to be able to set up a future interview together if that's something we would like to do. Now, being that I am considered to be small media, it is virtually unheard of that I am ever in a position to interview Ben Affleck in any capacity, getting to ask even a single question. Of course I need to get that, but I also really like Chris Terrio's work on these stories, especially for BVS, so I'm not about to let that go either. So essentially what I did was I tried to reiterate the question I had asked Zack on Saturday, but reshape it to also put a spotlight on the political commentary of Bruce's character arc, specifically so that both of them would have the freedom to speak on it as they saw fit. Now, Ben did not actually end up speaking about Bruce Wayne or Batman when answering my question. He used his time to speak about Chris's writing, and to be honest, I'm fine with that. Ultimately, I asked a question and Ben shared his thoughts. As far as I can tell, Ben didn't hate my question. He was being thoughtful and he was paying close attention to what I was saying and he was taking in what I was saying. And actually, when I first got my mic, I didn't think it was on, or maybe the volume was too low, and I heard this tapping noise, but it wasn't on my mic. And when I watched the video footage back, that was Ben tapping on his mic, and he kind of waved it in a way that seemed to suggest that he might have offered me his mic. So if I could just quickly figure out a way to build myself a time machine and go back and snatch Ben Affleck's microphone to ask him my question, that would have been a really fun turn of events. But no matter.
Oh, well, hey.
As long as you can be heard.
Should I stand or sit?
Lord have mercy.
Better than that, though, I love that when I'm talking to Chris Terrio, his eyes light up and he smiles when I mention whistleblowers. I appreciate your advocacy for whistleblowers in the story, you know, given what's happened to other journalists who have told the truth. I almost name-dropped Gary Webb and Julian Assange when asking these questions, but when you put me on the mic for a Q&A like this, I'm ultimately trying to figure out a way to shorten my very long-winded thoughts, and it is a challenge for me because I can't just stand there monologuing for 10 minutes because it's not me by myself in my room recording voiceover for a video essay where I can be as long-winded as I like. What else about Sunday? I'm definitely going out of order sequentially here, but earlier, before the theater opened up, when a lot of attendees were hanging around upstairs waiting for the doors to open, Zack arrived, and a lot of people in attendance were excited because a lot of them had never met Zack and this was their first showing of the weekend. I just stayed standing where I was because I didn't want to be aggressive like that because I had the opportunity to get my time with him that weekend, but when Zack walked by me, he reached out and said, "It's good to see you again." And I almost laughed out loud because I was really not trying to monopolize him, but I still ended up having an exchange with him, which was fun. I also saw Wes, Zack's producer, walking around, and I approached him to ask him if we could take a photo together, and he said yes. And then he started going off about how great my questions had been that weekend. And again, it felt very Twilight Zone for me because it was unprompted. I hadn't brought my questions up to him. And like I said earlier, I'm really not used to being complimented in person for my analyses of media, let alone by people who worked with Zack on these projects. Now, when Ray Fisher arrived, I was sitting next to the aisle where he was going to be walking by. I had to tap his hand to get him to see that it was me. And then he came in closer to say hi to me before going to his seat. And during the intermission, the talent went back down the front. And after the film had resumed, from the intermission, Chris Terrio was coming back up, and I had to say something because it's Chris Terrio. So I said, "Hi, Chris," and he came forward to shake my hand. He was really nice, and I told him, "Your work is exquisite. Thank you so much for coming." And honestly, he's such a sweetheart. I kind of expected him to be more, I don't know what, but we all know how viral he went for that really funny quote he gave in that interview where he said something like, "Zack's a gentleman, so he won't say it. I'm not, so I will." And that one line has a certain energy to it, but he seemed really sweet. Now, I'm not claiming to know him personally, but this was just the vibe he was giving off in the few moments that I had with him. When the film finished, I got my phone out because I was going to see if I could try to get a picture with Chris when he was coming back down the walkway to go to the seats that were set up for the panelists. And he stopped more or less right by me, and he was leaning against the wall right by where I was seated. I did not get a photo with him, but much to my delight, Ray Fisher was coming down, and when he went to meet with Chris, and he saw me too because he knew where I was seated, and we were right by each other, Ray grabbed Chris and brought him forward to formally introduce Chris to me. Ooh, I was shook. I was absolutely delighted. I was so grateful to have that moment to reiterate my high regard for Chris Terrio's work to him. And I also said cheekily, "Make sure they call on me for the Q&A because I have a question for this man." And I was talking about Chris, of course. Just so we're clear, I don't actually believe that the two of them said anything to Ray Porter about this. I was just happy to have my cute little fun moment of human connection with them, which I already said in this video is what I wanted out of the experience. Finally, the one other main thing I want to address, because it seems kind of necessary as I wrap up this video and talking about this weekend, I am sympathetic to the people who are upset about the questions that were being asked by some of the other attendees. I understand why you're frustrated, but I do feel it kind of necessary to state this on the record. I'm not angry at any of the other attendees. I'm really not, and I will explain why. I remember when I first started going to conventions, when I first got to be in the same rooms as people that I had only ever seen on screen, at cinemas, or on television, or on computer screens, and I remember how embarrassingly clueless I was about how to effectively articulate my thoughts and feelings about the media I watched, how to effectively put together a question compared to how I would approach putting a question together today. I've been doing press things here and there on and off for years now, despite the fact that I'm still only small media. But either way, I know that I have a different experience from a lot of the other attendees, and I know how harshly I berate my own memories of my first times getting to meet actors in person. And for whatever reason, I can at least know that I do not want to be as unkind in my judgments towards well-meaning fans as I am in my judgments towards my past self. So there's a lot of intense feelings and emotions that you experience when you're finally seeing people whose work you admire in person for the first time, and it's really easy to judge when you're sitting at home watching the event play out from behind a computer screen. A lot of people also have fears and anxieties about public speaking, so if it's something you're not used to doing, amplifying those baseline anxieties with the whole celebrity factor added in, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and when you're overwhelmed, that impacts your cognitive functioning. I know that. I've experienced that. Now, I'm not saying any of this to try to wag a finger at the people who are upset at the quality of questions, because like I said, I also understand why you're upset. I understand that you want to learn more about the works of art, and you want more questions being asked that you find to be more thoughtful or analytical. Long story short, I understand both sides of the situation. All I can say is that if and when I personally have any opportunities to speak with talent from the entertainment industry, I will do my best to make it worthwhile for whatever audience member is tuning in to watch. Now, will I interview anyone who is on these panels for SnyderCon? I would certainly like to. I reckon we'll all just have to wait and see though, because none of us really knows until it happens. I did let Zach know, though, that with all these times that he is apparently popping up on YouTube channels that fans have, I also have a YouTube channel, and he's never been on mine.
What am I, a duck? No, I mean...
At least not in an official capacity. But he and all of these professionals, they are their own people, and they are more than capable of deciding for themselves if and when they would like to visit my corner of the internet. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to the people that came up to say hi to me at one point or another at these series of screenings and panels, either because they have watched my channel before or because they appreciated my questions that I was asking throughout the weekend. I am very graciously accepting your kindness. Let me know your thoughts about SnyderCon 2023 in the comments below. Try to be kind to one another if possible, unless it's a landlord commenting, in which case you have my full permission to get a little verbally prickly.
Death. Death to the enemies of the people of the Republic.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.